Podcast with Joe and Sean. We are joined by Willy's Wonderland creator Gerard Parsons, and we have a lot to talk about right after this.
Change the game just now. I have a rave.
These are the best ideas I've ever heard.
I'm saying that's the commentary that will exist.
A Barbie girl in a Barbie world.
The filed Mickey Mouse.
Oh my god!
Welcome to the Guy at the Movies podcast with Joe and Sean. I am Joe. He is Sean. This is episode 92, and we are joined by the esteemed creator of Willy's Wonderland, Gerard Parsons. Gio, how are you?
Good. While that intro was playing, I was just like, I wonder what they'd do if I just had like incredible stage fright and just stared at the camera.
Who am I again?
Usually when we play that video, most of our guests just end up straight up leaving. And so we're happy you're still here.
We've talked to you before, so we know that that's not a big problem.
I know, you're lucky to have me back.
Listen, let's not put that out in the universe, okay? How have things been? What's going on your end? You're out in California.
I am. I'm out in beautiful Culver City, California. And good. You know, I think that for the last year in California, especially, it's been dark times. You know, everything's just been shut down. Movie theaters for the longest time were shut down or at 10% capacity or at a limited capacity. And everything that you went into, at least in Los Angeles, certainly in the county of LA, everybody had to have masks on all the time. Everyone was very careful. And it just seemed like things weren't back to normal. However, in the past month, I think most all the restrictions have been lifted. And it seems like, a lot of people are starting to live like they used to about 2 years ago. We'll see. Yeah. Obviously, I'm cautiously optimistic about everything. But things are going great. I think it feels like it used to. So that's certainly good news.
Yeah, it's a good feeling. It's kind of crazy. I was at a screening last night and the theater was filled, and it took me aback at first. I was just like, "Ooh, is this okay?" We haven't done this in like 2.5 years. It's nuts. It's good to see things kicking back into gear. Sean, what's going on over there up in Connecticut?
Well, usually in Connecticut, the theaters are at 10% capacity, but that's voluntarily. So, it's been great. We've had some full theaters at times, and it is that first moment is pretty scary, but then it's just a joyful moment. Obviously when we look at the one we all think about is Spider-Man No Way Home, when finally everyone's screaming and laughing and yelling, and it's just one of those things where it's the community is finally back there.
Giving everybody the Omicron variant, so we all got it, and then
yeah, right.
That's exactly what happened right after that.
I had to get tested today for something, and it still terrifies me. I'm sitting there around people who are also getting tested. I'm like, what if I'm positive? Like I'm a hermit. I don't do anything, so I'm like, what if I'm positive? This is gonna be embarrassing. What am I gonna do? But hey, it's the world we live in now. It's kind of crazy. Gio, you're with us for the long haul tonight on this podcast. All of our craziness, our shenanigans. Please don't hold it against us if we are ridiculous.
I am. I gave you guys 10 minutes.
You had a hard out.
4:15 my time.
That was not in the rider. We sent you the Skittles you requested, but
all red Skittles. Come on.
We sent that. Okay. Your people talk to my people, which is also me. Let's talk a little bit about what you've been working on, Gio. Of course, Willy's Wonderland Sean and I talk about it all the time. One of my favorite hits in quite a while. I was actually just talking to my niece's husband this morning, and she goes, "Oh, best part of that movie, Nicolas Cage doesn't say a thing. I loved it." So it's kind of crazy. But what's new in Willy's Wonderland world? The comics are doing really well. Anything you can tell us about the future?
Sure. Well, let me here. I'm just grabbing a comic from behind. So we got all the comics up in there.
Yeah.
Listening to this, I'm holding up a comic proudly right now. So we got the first 2 issues of the comic book. It's like a prequel series to what happens at Willy's Wonderland, and those are out right now. So we got Willy's Wonderland number 1, number 2. And number 3 is coming out on May the 4th, so that's easy to remember as far as Star Wars Day. So that the third one's coming out. The third one I'm really stoked about because it alludes heavily to what's talked about in some of the flashbacks of the movie. So if you're a fan of the film but haven't checked out the comic book series yet, book 3 really gets into some of the backstory that happens in the movie. So that's really exciting. And the comic book has just been an absolute success. And if you're listening to me right now and you haven't checked it out or don't know what's about it, it basically is the prequel to the movie. It talks about how the serial killers became the animatronics, sort of their life as maniacs before inhabiting the creatures that they are. It is incredibly bloody and disgusting and scary, but also beautiful. I have to say the art of the comic book is incredible. Like, the art is fantastic. It belongs in a museum. Every panel is it just blows me away, and just like I feel humbled every time thinking that I'm involved with it. And then the story too, you know, the people that write the comics, Jim and Scott, they've done such a great job of taking this little like throwaway backstory that was in the movie and like putting a whole world behind it, a whole town, you know, giving personality to the 8 killers before they become the psychos. So the books are going extremely well. We got 3 in, and then 4 will come out later on in the year. And then hopefully the plan with the comic books is to somehow get the janitor involved, because right now we got the prequel things, and that's giving all the due to the animatronics, but you know, the janitor is conspicuously absent in those. And so it'd be fun to take his story after Willy's Wonderland or before, you know, and just kind of see, you know, what else he's dealing with. And that was always an idea that I had in the back of my mind. It was like, well, you have this great character, the janitor, what else can he do? Like, and to me, he was always, you know, there's really no backstory to him, but in my mind, he's always this guy who ends up in the wrong place at the wrong time and has to like battle whatever evil creature he may come across. So in Willy's Wonderland, he's got the animatronics, but you know, he could take on a slew of evil characters and have different adventures where, you know, he's always drinking soda and taking his and being the janitor, you know, cleaning the town of whatever evil infestation has taken.
Listen, Gio, we've had countless ideas on here about like, you know, a theme park, cruise ship, like all.
Oh yeah, the cruise ship. That one crossed my mind too. Yeah, well, that's the thing. He's such a fun character. It'd be great to see him like branch out and take on. You always have to bring it back to the animatronics. They're like his Darth Vader, but he's got to have his sub bosses that he takes on before getting back to the clash. So hopefully in the comic book series we can do that, and that's kind of an aim that I've been shooting for.
That's all.
Because that's what was always interesting about the janitor character is the moment he realizes the animatronics are coming to life and trying to kill him, Nicolas Cage does not really have much of a reaction except for a light "here we go again." So he's seen this shit before, so in some form, in some fashion, and so I would love to see in what ways, and also his affinity for pinball and dancing while pinball is.
Oh, he loves it. He loves all that stuff. It was always my like favorite funny thing to do. Just in watching all the movies, and you guys are obviously the movie fans. It's like you watch all these movies, and it's like whenever an evil creature attacks the innocent heroes of the story, they're always scared. They're always worried. And I was like, what if the dude didn't care? There's no big deal at all. I think that was like the birth of the concept of it. It's like, what if he just did not care?
Just another day in the office.
I think like these things attacked him. I think that, you know, he beat him up. He got the place clean. Now he's leaving. He's not going to think about it again. It's not like he's going to have nightmares awake. Oh my God. No, he didn't care. The second he left, he was on to something else.
So I've seen you on social media talking about this or answering questions. I'm sure you get this a lot about Willy's Wonderland 2 or any future in the films or in film for Willy's Wonderland. What can you tell us? I know probably a lot that you can't, but
well, I mean, yeah, there's nothing. There's a couple of things like everybody's like, why isn't Willy's Wonderland 2? Well, if somebody were to ask me, will there be a Willy's Wonderland 2? My answer would be yes. If I were just to put money on it, my answer would be yes. When that's going to happen, I'm not sure. one of the things that happened in March of 2021 after the movie came out. So the movie came out in the mid-February. And then so in March 2021, when we talked to everybody about doing a sequel, everybody was behind the sequel. One of the main scary things about doing it was just when we talked about at the beginning of the show was COVID. And because when you put up an independent movie like Willy's Wonderland was, you have to have everything go right because, just this one thing goes wrong, it could absolutely crash the project. For example, like if we did Willy's Wonderland and 2 and the budget was X amount of dollars and Nick Cage got sick and he needed to go away for 2 weeks, that might just put an end to the movie right there. So I think that everybody was cautiously optimistic going, hey, let's wait until things kind of clear up before doing it again. And so that I understand. And then the next part about it is just threading the needle in order to get Nick Cage's schedule. The guy, to his amazing credit, like his career has really just blown up. He's gotten I'm not saying Willy's Wonderland had anything to do with it. But
we didn't know about this guy beforehand. Yeah.
From Willy's Wonderland, you got that, and immediately after Willy's Wonderland, then Pig came out, which was one of his most critically acclaimed movies of all time, where I think he got stiffed on the Oscars. But that was such a huge thing for him that it opened up the door to him doing the one that's about to come out next week, the Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, and then he's got playing Dracula. So it's like all of a sudden his board fills up, his dance card's full, and then in order to get him for a sequel, if we were to be able to, we'd have to just be able to slide in and get him at the right time, which again, totally possible. Just don't know when it's going to happen. Yeah.
Are you going to make sure you see Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, hoping that there is a Willy's Wonderland reference somewhere?
Yeah, I think there probably wouldn't be a Willy's. I've read the script. There's not a Willy's Wonderland in the script. And I sent his manager, is a friend of mine, a note saying like, hey, you guys doing an LA premiere? Because I'd like to check that out.
Get your way in there.
Get back to me.
It would be great if in one of the scenes, like whenever he's, I don't know, playing the characters of the past, you just see him in like the janitor's t-shirt or whatever.
I wish they did that. They probably won't, because I think our movie, they had started filming that just around the time that Willy's Wonderland was finishing up or about ready to come out. So
wow.
It was pre Willy's Wonderland coming out.
So is there a script for it? I mean, you have an idea or I'm sure you have an idea of like where you would want to go with the story, but you also have this prequel happening. Is that influencing anything? The prequel in terms of the comic series?
I think that what the ultimate idea, and I don't know if I'll be able to pull this off, so nobody hold me to it, but like the best idea would be in the 1 through 4 comics are already set, but in the next set of comics, if we were to know that the sequel was for sure happening at a certain time, you could do like a fun little story where you have the janitor's adventures and it leads to the second movie. So you could watch movie 1, movie 2, not miss out on anything. But if you were a big Willy's Wonderland fan, then you could read those comics and kind of get a whole underlying story of what's going on in the sequel. And as far as ideas for the sequel, there's been tons of ideas that I've written up, as possible things, because like the first movie was a little bit easier. You didn't have any, there was just the script and you had Nicolas Cage and you could do it and there was no expectations. You were the underdog, basically. We were totally the underdog. But now we go in there as like a number 2 seed or, a number 1 that's looking to knock you off. So you have a lot of other people that would, Nicolas Cage would have to be, of course, on board to do it. And that's tough. He doesn't do that many sequels to his movies, and rarely has he done an independent movie sequel. So that getting him to really be excited about it, which I think that we could do that. And then just everybody else who is involved, just getting them on board and saying, like, this wacky idea worked and this next wacky idea is even crazier and everybody's going to go for it. So yeah, I did write up about 10 different ideas of things that because you got to have the animatronics and you got to have Willy and you have to have a story that puts them all together and makes sense. And it's not just a retread of the first one. So it's all been in the works. Just hasn't lifted off yet.
A political national convention, something there. Like, let's get going crazy.
There we go. Like I thought about that way prior to it. He's like, they have the Hall of Presidents at Disney. He just goes in there and starts cleaning house.
Now I can't see anything else but that. That
Right,
sounds
right.
perfect.
Gio, someone said in the comments you should probably do a limited TV series on Willy's Wonderland, and that's something I mentioned offline. Like, oh, a TV series would be fun. Or
I mean, that idea to the person that I brought up that stuff. I think that that there could be a limited TV series of any kind of you could do it a bunch of different ways. But you know what I look at is like on YouTube, kids do cartoons about Willy's Wonderland, and you look at them and they're done, number one, extremely well, but they're very popular too. So you could do like an adult animation Willy's Wonderland series. You could do a limited series on like a streamer like Hulu that has Willy's Wonderland. If you haven't seen it, it's on Hulu now. It's just like you could totally take in that direction. And yeah, these are all ideas that I've actively discussed.
That's awesome. That's so cool. What has the response been like for you? I know we talked a little bit about this after Willy's first came out, but even in the past couple of years, it's funny today posting that you were going to be on the pod. There were Twitter accounts that were messaging me as the animatronic characters, and I was like, "Is this an official Willy's Wonderland thing? Is this just a fan? Like, what's happening?"
It's cool. It's well beyond anything I ever expected. I had written Willy's Wonderland simply to try and like just jumpstart my career or help myself out, and it took off into this thing. And I think that the really cool thing is just like that everybody either loves Willy's Wonderland or despises it. So that's exactly what it was supposed to be. So like I can mention it to anybody and at least they know what it is. They're either going to love it or they're going to hate it, but they know what it is. And that's super important to me. Now, another important thing is just the people that were messaging you. That Willy's Wonderland's fan base is amazing. Mm-hmm. It's uberly supportive of each other. They're very artistic. The people that draw the Willy's Wonderland art, it's just amazing. I wish I would I do have this like idea that would be, now that things are opening up, it's just like getting like a little gallery space somewhere and just having all the Instagram art and all the Twitter art and all the art that's been put up online, just being able to showcase the artists that have done amazing work. So that's really important to me. People send me photos or drawings that they've spent hours and hours on all the time, and that's mind blowing.
You were doing that on Wednesdays for a while back in the day, right?
Yeah, I still get them, and people are still doing it. There's a whole community of really fabulous people that have become friends through the artwork that I don't they message each other back, and I've never had a negative experience with anybody about Willy's Wonderland, not one ever, just from the fans and from the people that have watched it. So that's really cool to me too, especially because, when I was first starting out, you do this stuff and you say, hey, this is really special. You tell somebody, hey, this is a really good idea. And they don't listen to you, or they just don't know. They say no or whatever, and it can get you down. And if anybody's out there listening to me that says, I have a good idea for something, but no one's paying attention to me. Well, yes, so did I. It's like, don't take a no as an excuse to give up. You just got to like keep trying, keep getting it out there. And then once people recognize it, you'll get, you can make your dreams come true. So
that's awesome.
It's been nothing but positive.
You should do a Star Wars movie, because I hear that fan base is really forgiving and
really fun. They don't have like, vote you off of Twitter. Like.
I would, yeah. I've never had any Twitter wars. I've never had anybody, but the direction that we take Luke in.
yeah, right.
We're gonna put Luke in a Chuck E. Cheese that's haunted.
Hey, you know what? People would dig that. I don't think with the Star Wars movies. My idea for a Star Wars movie is you just have Yoda trapped in a closet for about 2 hours, where he just can't get out. The movie only costs you about $5,000 to make, and it makes $100 million.
My God,
and then everybody's like, well, it's sort of genius.
Well, Yoda's in it, so it's good.
They're going to go see it.
Pretty much how everyone sees it now.
There'd be so many people that would just be sitting there being like, I'm not going to go see it. No, I'm not going to go see it. And then they're fine.
So, Gio, what's next for you? Well, not what's next, but are there ideas outside of Willy's Wonderland now?
Yeah.
Are there just a million of them, or is there anything specific in the pipe?
I have 3 screenplays that I'm trying to make, it's like spinning plates, just trying to make things happen with. And then some intellectual property that I got a hold of that's kind of fun too. So it's just, with all this stuff, it's just, you just got to keep trying and keep keep grinding at it. And even, with the win of Willy's Wonderland, it's still just an absolute grind to get stuff done. I want to get to the point where it's not an absolute grind, but yeah, it's still an absolute grind right now. And I just keep working at it.
I would never have that patience. I was listening to a pod recently about, or with one actor, I can't even remember who it was, but he was talking about how there were so many times that he thought he was going to have a role, and then it would get down the road and they'd be like, oh, the funding fell through, or, oh, that's not happening. And how you just can't hang your hat on, I'm going to be doing this then, or even at all, because the industry is just so crazy.
Yeah, I think that there's no guarantees. And I think that if you take a step up the ladder, it just gets harder. You see, it doesn't matter. Like it never gets easier. I mean, even, Tom Cruise he's at the top of the list, and he's the producer of the movie. And what do you hear about him? He's screaming at everybody. He's telling everybody they got to do all this, and that's because he's grinding so hard at all this stuff. So it's just, nothing's ever given. You just got to keep going, keep going, keep going.
Yeah, crazy industry you're in, but what a good start with Willy's Wonderland, right?
It's awesome. Totally, I appreciate it, and I appreciate you guys, and and thank you for letting me rave about it for the last 20 minutes.
I think what's going to be cool about it is that whatever the IP is that you have, which I'm sure you can't really tell us, so we'll keep it mysterious, or the other screenplays, people will just say, yeah, that's the guy that did Willy's Wonderland, and so
exactly.
People can either not know what Willy's Wonderland is and explore it, or they're just like, oh, wait, I got faith that this guy can do some crazy ideas that work very well, and, go.
Well, that is, I kind of think that all those movies that I've talked about, everything would just be, it's just kind of like Willy's Wonderland is kind of like a theme park ride. You get in, you strap in, the first 5 minutes is like the roller coaster going up. And as soon as he gets to Willy's, that's when you're going through all the barrel rolls and corkscrews and fun stuff. And so those are the kind of movies that I always like. It's just like, it's like a theme park ride. You get on, you have fun, you enjoy it, you get off, and then on to something else.
I mentioned earlier that I was looking for images when I was putting together the cover art, and I kept finding the image of the plunger on the gorilla, and that one, it just like brings me back, and I'm like, I need to watch this again.
We're in the Greens. We had like there's a story I've talked about it where we had to change some of the animatronics, and we changed the one to a gorilla because the guy that was creating the suits had a gorilla suit already made for a different project that didn't go through. So he's like, hey, can we just turn one of it into a gorilla, please? It'll make things a lot easier. Yeah, okay. But the line in the script said, like, very nice to meet you. And I was like, okay, and I was a gorilla. So I changed it to gorilla greetings. And that little line just became, all this stuff that I spent maybe about 4 seconds thinking about. The birthday song. My dad's so resentful of the birthday song because he's a songwriter and he plays guitar, and he spent like the last 30 years, making music and trying as hard as he can to like get out there. And his son's got this stupid birthday thing that's got millions of views everywhere. So he's very resentful of the whole thing.
That's hilarious. I mean, I could just imagine you sitting there being like, well, what would be a good song? What could I do? Like spinning the pen.
Most of this stuff is like, it's just like, it's just like, just the first thing, gorilla greens. Let's see here. Chameleon, it's just whatever. I don't care. I didn't care.
Hey, and look what happened. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. That's, again, just go with your first instinct.
Well, once again, we enjoy talking with you, so we wanted to have you on the pod and dive into some of the topics we'll get into here, and kind of hear a little bit more about, Gio's view on movies in general and the news that we'll talk about. We'd like to start off talking about what we've been watching, and a lot of times we'll end up spending a long time on this, but we'll run through it a little bit tonight. I'm going to start off. I saw Ambulance last night, the new Jake Gyllenhaal, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, as well as Isaac Gonzalez. It's the Michael Bay movie. I loved this movie, and I was not expecting it. I had just an absolute blast with it, and it is a thrill ride. I've never been in a theater where it was that intense the entire time from start to finish. It's wild, and it was fun seeing it. We were talking, I think, whoever mentioned it earlier about clapping in theaters and stuff like that. Like people were clapping, and my mom goes, "Do they do that?" And I'm like, "It's been a while since you've been to the theater, Mom." But yeah, it's a wild ride. And for Michael Bay, I mean, the first explosion doesn't come until like an hour and a half in, so it's pretty impressive. Like that's restraint.
He's weaning himself off of them. Yeah.
The other one I'll touch on real quick is Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Saw that with a bunch of children on Saturday. But it was fun. If you like the first one, you're going to like this. They're doing a really good job of delivering good, clean family fun. They make a really funny joke in there about Vin Diesel and The Rock. They're like, oh, this has been going on longer than the feud between Vin Diesel and The Rock. And like those deep cuts I just thought were really funny. But yeah, good stuff coming out soon. And we'll see what happens down the road. I'm very interested, Sean, to hear your take on The Bubble.
Yeah, so I went Netflix crazy this past week, and one of those movies I saw was The Bubble. And I won't lie, it's not good. The story is like just sort of a mess, or there just isn't a story. However, it's worth watching because it is very, very, very funny. And it is like basically a way more sloppy Tropic Thunder, which is interesting because Tropic Thunder is a pretty sloppy movie in general, but it just has that same like indictment of like Hollywood and stuff. But the problem I really had is I didn't know that there was such a lack of story that there was no way to follow what was coming next and what was like next after that. And so there were just moments where it dragged. I mean, we were having a great time and then we paused it thinking that it was wrapping up and it was like halfway through. And so, and it wasn't even that the pace was slow or anything. We just assumed that there was a lot happening already. Judd Apatow usually is like very meticulous about his story. And this one, I think he just let every single actor just like have at it and do their best and just goof off. That works to a certain degree, but doesn't work enough for a story. So that's the one, like I had a little bit of an issue, but still I liked it way more. Most people were like, I turned it off after 5 minutes. I'm like, well, what the hell did you get out of that then? Like, cool, dude. I mean, that was before any joke happened. The other one I saw was another surprise, but in a great way, because a lot of people were sort of a few critics I knew were dunking on this one, which like bummed me out. But this is Richard Linklater's new movie, Apollo 10.5. It's done with rotoscope animation, and it's about a kid that it goes to space before Apollo 11 back in the 60s. Obviously a fantasy, but it was a top secret mission, so who knows? Maybe it's real. And what was fascinating about this movie is the balls on Linklater. For that is the premise of the movie, a kid goes to space, and that is 2 minutes of the movie. The rest of it is basically Jack Black narrating about people growing up in the 60s near like during the space race, everything like that. And it was amazing. People didn't like that. People like didn't like the fact that like, wait a minute, the whole thing this movie is about is barely shown. And instead, this is just this like straight up nostalgia fest. I didn't grow up in the 60s. I didn't grow up with the space race, but I still related to this. And it was just this thing that warms your heart. It's just wonderful.
That's awesome.
The animation is freaky. Like the rotoscope animation is always freaky. It's always just something like, some people, you got to have the taste for it. I always like it. And especially this, because it's kind of like the memories of a childhood. So it's a little bit blurry at times, but I truly just like straight up loved this movie. Most people are mad about it, but I'm also a Linklater guy, so he kind of can do no wrong for me. But especially with this one, I was kind of blown away.
Willy's Wonderland in space. That's the idea, Gio.
Yeah, I think that would be like the 10th one, I'm going to be coming at you from my mansion.
Issue number 45.
Yeah, right. Gio, you mentioned theaters reopening out there. Have you been able to get out and see anything that's been interesting to you?
Well, yeah, no, I have. Here's the good and the bad news. The good news is I've watched plenty of stuff this week. The bad news is, I was saying you guys off air, Amalia, my wife, is in Tennessee. And I watch all the movies with her. And the last movie that I went and saw without her was Deadpool 2 a few years ago. And I never heard the end of it. And so this week, I watched nothing new. I got stuff in the queue, it could have gone to the Fantastic Beasts and checked that one out. I got the Contractor. I could have watched that. No way. Ain't happened. I even thought about it. I was like, maybe I could just watch it for the podcast. Now I should find out. So what did I do? I went into the Wayback Machine and I watched some old movies, and I hope that's okay to talk about.
Oh, Sean will love this.
Hell yeah, let's go.
Okay, so I'll tell everybody, like when the pandemic started and the movie theaters closed down, I did a little work and created my own little home theater. So it didn't actually cost that much money, and I'm encouraging you guys out there, if you're stuck at home and you haven't been able to do this, such a good way of watching movies.
Sean's wife is about to freak out at you, Gio.
Yo, she's gonna kill you, man. We are pretty close to. This is my sorry, I'm interrupted on your thing,
Please.
but this is my way of announcing we're possibly moving into a new house soon. We got to dot some T's and cross some I's, but there is a lovely basement for a home theater that she had other plans for. She's gonna be so mad, but I'm doing it now that I know that it doesn't cost much. So there we go.
Here's how I was able to set it up, and I think this was probably and honestly, it wasn't. When I say it didn't cost much, it was under $300. I got the motorized screen on eBay. I think that was like $60, and it's like 110 or something like the inches. It comes up and down. I got a projector screen. There was this kid put his stuff on Craigslist, and he's like one of those kids. It's like, yeah, I had the 2K version, but now the 4K version came out, and this is trash. I don't even want to see this thing. And I was like, so he gave me this projector. So I got this projector from this kid that was like really high tech and almost like brand new, but he wanted nothing to do with it. And that was like $200. And then I had a sound bar that I got for $50. So $310 to set this thing up. I got, and then blackout curtains because I got to close the lights out. So take all that stuff, black it out. But it's as close to a movie theater experience as you can get from your own home. But the good thing is, like, when I'm watching it on the screen, I don't have the phone in my hand. It's not like you're at the theater, but it's close, and it's a great way to experience the movie, as an experience. So that's what I got set up. So as she's out of town, I've been just running through the old movies. So I watched Treasure of the Sierra Madre, 1948. If you guys haven't seen that one, it's just a fabulous movie. Lots of just very tense throughout the whole entire thing. Just a fabulous one. And then I put on The Wild Bunch, great Western, lots of violence. Old timey Western, CinemaScope, beautiful, like one of the most beautifully shot movies there is. And then last one, To Live and Die in Los Angeles. That's a Tarantino film, or it's one of his. It's a for Deacon film. Is that how you say his name? But it's one of Tarantino's favorites. So I checked that one out. It's amazing. Got one of the best car chases in cinema history. Again, those are my three. If you haven't checked them out, that's what I checked out this week. Totally worth checking out if you're into something from.
Is that Willem Dafoe in To Live and Die in LA?
Yes, he's the villain in that movie. He's the villain in that movie.
He does. He looks younger in the pictures I'm seeing, but he looks exactly like Willem Dafoe. He's and he plays a great villain, and it's just it's like a lot. You can see why it's a Tarantino favorite, and I hadn't really heard of it until my brother-in-law kind of told me about it, and then amazing. So those are my three suggestions of what I watched this week, and worth checking out if you want to check out something.
The first two are just ultimate classics. Just some of the Treasure of the Sierra Madre is just like how movies just like should be made all the time. Like just every little ounce of it is just perfect. Oh God, I love that movie.
That is the thing that is kind of lost, is that everyone forgets that there is 100 years of cinema history that a lot of us just tend to forget about. And it's understandable. There's always something new coming out. You always want to check out something new, but you'll find the treasures in the past, and a lot of stuff that people steal from, including myself, is all the stuff that happened 80, 90 years ago. Great stuff.
Well, Sean, you've been on a kick with the Criterion channel, right? And just going deep into the older films.
Pretty much the two best streamers are HBO Max and Criterion for old movies. I mean, especially because HBO Max is just 8 different things, including Criterion, but also having the TCM on that is just unbelievable. I mean, last night I watched Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, which is my wife's favorite movie. I've never seen it, which is the first time that ever happened, ever. And I loved that movie. I loved and I never have seen it. I know the dance scene where they're it's the beautiful dance scene at the barn raising. I'm aware of that scene, but everything else I didn't know about, but it was great. Oh my goodness.
I'm adding these all to a list right now, just so you know.
I could go on. and this is another good thing they had in Los Angeles, but now I'm just taking up time. But the LA County Museum used to do these screenings where they had just a lot of old films you could go, and a lot of times they'd have the star of the old film that was there. I remember going a couple of times. I met Charlton Heston once when they did a Soylent Green screening. That was really cool. That's some of my favorite stuff. If you're out there, get into the old films and try and see them in the theaters, because you'll be surprised at how amazing they are.
That's awesome. Where I grew up, there was a nice little county theater that would on the weekends play like a recent release, usually more art house, and also the Netflix ones. Now that I think about it, like that's where I saw Marriage Story and The Irishman, in very uncomfortable old seats in this theater for 4 hours. But it was wonderful, and they do that. They play a lot of the older films, and it's really neat, kind of seeing that old school, walking down Main Street and popping into the movie theater and catching a movie before you leave. I definitely miss being around there because that was a really cool environment. All right, let's talk a little bit about what's been going on at the modern box office, if you will. The movie called Morbius came out, which everyone absolutely loved and didn't hate at all.
That stole a lot from Treasure of the Sierra Madre, by the way.
I'm sure.
What's wild about it is it still did really well at the box office for pandemic times. It made about 39 million, if not 40 million, once they round up on Monday. I didn't double check that. But there's a lot of talk about this film and whether or not it deserves the hate that it's getting. And Sean, I'm going to start with you. You're not a big comic book guy here, in terms of the movies especially, and I know that you didn't love this one, but what was your take on this? Because I saw you gave it a D, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's very curious to talk about, like, this is the one thing that everyone's been referencing about Morbius. It's like 16% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I think that there's an interesting comment that a lot of people make is like, wow, it's not good, but it doesn't deserve the 16%. And that's like something that I was saying. And then I was like, wait a minute, that's not, and I still gave it a bad review though. So I would have been part of the 84%. And so there's something to tell me that, I'm the one that would be driving it down. Now, I'm not an actual Rotten Tomatoes critic, so my opinion doesn't really matter too much. But like that is something that's interesting where it's, we're looking at Morbius that got a 16, like it was a grade. And Rotten Tomatoes does like sort of make it seem like it's grades. But no, it's just someone doing a thumbs up or a thumbs down, which is a very, very, very uncomplicated way to view things. And therefore, when like enough people do a thumbs down, like I would, it would go down to 16. But then I say to myself, well, it shouldn't be getting hit that much. I figured that more people would enjoy it. I didn't like this movie because it just seemed very rushed. And all of a sudden, like for an hour 44 minutes, which is not a long runtime or not a short runtime, it's just a runtime to me. But I look at something like that, and it's a good solid runtime to make some characters established and to like understand what's going on. But instead, it really moved very fast through a lot of important plot points, and I ended up at the end just kind of, being a little bit unsatisfied, especially with a very, very sharp ending at the end that just, wasn't much of a fang, but was more of just like, it just like immediately ended. And that felt a little bit odd to me. I could go through like a lot of stuff there, but the word I just keep on using is rushed. And there could have been something here. And that's why I gave it a D, is like, there was some potential underneath this that could have been a little bit more fascinating. And of course, like, just to shout out Matt Smith, who, gives just a flat out delicious performance. And this guy just knows how to like perform in movies that are just, well, a lot of people liked the Edgar Wright film that I can't remember. Oh, Last Night in Soho. I wasn't a big fan of it, but he was great in that as well. So he kind of like knows how to shine in movies at this point. He's knowing how to stand out. So I'm looking forward to what he does next, which off the top of my head I don't know, but I know there's something. But that's like my whole take on this. I think the top of the box office thing, people like to revolt against critically panned movies, and this happens a lot. You see this very often when, especially comic book movies, but often with Star Wars movies as well. If it gets poor critic praise, then it will immediately get high up on the box office, and vice versa. All right, where the audiences will hate it if it gets praised well by critics, like if it's got like a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes and stuff like that. People will just be like, well, this is a piece of crap, because they want to revolt against the hoity-toity critics, which I sort of get in some ways. I do kind of get that, but yeah, that's where I'm seeing where some of this Morbius the stuff is coming from.
I think the thing with it for me was there's definitely a lot of issues with it, and they stuck out to me a lot. But when I left the theater, I still had a good time. Mm-hmm. Even though like it wasn't great, I still had a good time. And I think that's why I don't think it deserves the 16% on there, if we're going to use that as kind of like the end all be all. Matt Smith is doing House of Dragons, the Game of Thrones.
That's what it was. Yeah.
Gio, as a filmmaker, when you hear talk of, from the critics and you get that critical review or you see a Rotten Tomatoes score or whatever it may be, how much does that impact you? Because I have to feel like, for me, like that criticism I'd probably take to heart, and I don't know like how in the industry you're taught, for lack of a better phrase or term, to ignore it or utilize it. I don't know. How does that impact you?
And I've gotten my fair share of 1 stars, and I've gotten my fair share of 10 stars, and I think that after a while it all kind of blends together. Like, I think when I first got like the first reviews or whatever, I think I was like, oh wow, amazing, this person really likes it. And then, the more that you get, you just realize everybody has their own different kind of flavor and different kind of movie that you liked. And I think about this, I remember I got like the Willy's Wonderland got one review where it's like, it could only be enjoyed if you had like a spear through your skull or something. And I thought to myself, what happened was I was like walking down the road, and I just happened to like come across a couple that was having coffee, and they were very prim and they were very proper. And I thought to myself, well, that was probably the guy that reviewed Willy's Wonderland. And of course he's going to say you need a spear through your head to enjoy it because it ain't his flavor. And so as a filmmaker, I think that you just have to be able to laugh at the good ones and at the bad ones. And if you get a bad review, just kind of let it go. That was kind of, or just don't hold it against the person, or if you can never. The other thing is like there's crazy stories about like filmmakers will get like a bad review and then they'll call the guy up, I'll kill you. No, that's the wrong thing to do. That is just the absolute wrong thing to do. Everybody has their own taste. You're a critic and you're paid to give your opinion, or you're out there trying to give your opinion. So just, cool. You liked it. Fabulous. If you didn't like it, no problem. You're making the movie for yourself. Yeah. As far as the Morbius stuff goes, I haven't seen the film yet. I do pay attention to the critics, obviously. And Joe, yours is one of the easy. Yours are always because you're just in the Instagram feed. So it's simple for me to go, oh, Ambulance got 5 out of 5. Oh, geez, or this one got a 1 out of 5. Oh, but I don't think it would stop me from seeing the movie. Obviously, it's not going to stop me from seeing the movie. Yeah. And I think that it as a filmmaker, yeah, it plays into it, but I don't think I would ever be like, well, the critics didn't like this, so I'm going to change this up for the next time. I don't know.
Yeah, I love hearing that, because Sean and I talk about that all the time. Like, doing the critic stuff, we get comments that will say like, well, I hated this movie. I can't believe you liked it or whatever. And my response, unless it's a really nasty message, my response is always like, happy for you. Like, that's great. Or like, go check it out for yourself. Just remember, like, this is my opinion. You can do this too. So it's a really good point that films, are going to hit people different ways. And that's how it should be.
I think you have to steel yourself. If you want to play basketball, people are going to criticize. LeBron James is going to get criticized if he misses a shot. That's part of the game. If you're going to make a movie, you're going to get criticized. So you just, that's just part of the game. You have to just learn to live with it. I think that's what I would tell somebody who are going to put yourself out there. And if you're going to put yourself out there and do anything, then prepare for the consequences, good and bad.
Gio, I'm going to send you this audio afterwards, because I think you can repurpose it as like a master class.
Yeah, there we go.
It'd be good.
Or we could just edit it to say like
how to have your life blow up.
Just edit it to say like, if you give me bad reviews, I'll kill you.
Take it out. Hey, everybody who gave me a 40 on that, right?
But you do read them. I guess that's the point.
Oh yeah. Taking. Well, I think I didn't. No, my mom reads them. My mom reads every single one of them. And she's the person that's like, this dude, he's a goner if I ever see him. Me, I read through like. I read through a couple. I read through the 1-star ones I like the most. I do enjoy just getting panned.
Letterboxd is a blast too. If you ever find those.
Yeah, please, I love that too. And the IMDb, you could lose yourself doing that stuff. Twitter quote tweets when the trailer came out. There's all that stuff. You could really lose yourself in it for sure. Yeah.
Oh.
And you just have to mentally. I don't know. You have to have a bright outlook no matter what. Hey, you're getting to make a movie and millions of people are seeing it. Like, shut up.
There's the tagline for the episode. No,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
kidding.
the next one.
Well, let's talk about the next story here. It's this is a crazy one to me because the Crow reboot has been in the works for quite a long time and has had a lot of, I'm not a superstitious person, but there's certain things where I'm like, maybe we just leave this one alone. Bill Skarsgård has signed on to play the lead in the Crow reboot from Rupert Sanders, who is best known for Snow White and the Huntsman. But this, like I said, they've been trying to work on this for quite a while. This is, of course, based on, it was a 90s movie, right? 94.
94.
Yeah.
1994. And unfortunately, there was a lot of tragedy is the word I'm looking for. A lot of tragedy there with the passing of the star, Brandon. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting his last name. Brandon Lee. Thank you. But this is wild. I don't know if I would want to step into this role as, if I was Bill Skarsgård. But Gio, I'm assuming that you're a fan of The Crow, or you've seen The Crow at least.
Oh yeah. Well, let me say, in 1994, when The Crow came out, it was a movie of its time for sure.
Absolutely.
And they've had 3 Crow sequels. There's one that came right after it, Crow City of Angels, and then there was like 2 others that was like, one had Edward Furlong in it. I think the last one,
Salvation and Wicked Prayer.
Yeah, Wicked Prayer had Edward Furlong in it. But the first one, if you're listening to us right now and you haven't seen the first one, you very much have to see it. It is an excellent movie. And you know what? One of the most important things about that Crow 94 movie that I remember about it, being 12 years old, the soundtrack. The soundtrack of the 1994 Crow movie was like the first ever one that I was like, I have to go out and buy this on CD because it had so many great artists at the time. And it added so much to that movie. So I was always a huge fan of The Crow. And I think that you can reboot The Crow. Obviously, it's been 30 years since, if they do this one, if it gets made. And like you said, it has been snake bit, where there's been things attached to it where it hasn't been able to get going. But I think that you wouldn't want to try and retread what they already did in '94, what they tried to do at the turn of the millennium. Just give it a new story, have that character, have fun with it, but don't try and redo the dark, gritty, rainy Detroit musically alternatives original. You couldn't beat it.
Sean, what do you think about this? Because, first of all, what do you think about them rebooting it, and then also the fact that it's Bill Skarsgård that's in the role after Luke Evans was attached at one point, as well as Jason Momoa in 2018. So it's kind of wild.
Those 2 are not great casting, although I love Luke Evans and Jason Momoa, but they don't seem as haunted enough for this role. And Bill Skarsgård is friggin' terrifying, and so can absolutely pull this role off very good. But reboots are always tricky. Because like you said, you cannot do the exact same thing. If you do the exact same thing, it will come off as a copy that doesn't work as well. If you do something entirely different, then what's the point? And what's there? So you got to have something with the same spirit there. While it gives something different, maybe throw it in a more modern situation, more modern setting. But reboots are always are just stuff that I never can really get behind. Not because I think like Hollywood's out of ideas, they're just rehashing everything. I don't like get on a soapbox. I'm like, cool, yeah, let's try this again. But often it fails for trying to be something that's way too far off the mark, or just like an exact iteration, which both of those don't work.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I actually really like the casting. I think that Skarsgård's going to do really well with it, or could do really well with it. I'm just looking back to see who the director of the film was at the time. And he did go on to do films like I, Robot, Dark City. Gods of Egypt was his last feature in 2016, Alex Proyas. But I just can't imagine, after such tragedy on a film like that, when Brandon Lee passed, that I mean, even the fact that they did 3 sequels is kind of surprising to me, given the tragedy around the film. But I guess we were joking around, Gio, the other day about Free Willy randomly. This is a really weird aside, and how like they made 3 other Free Willies that no one ever really like knew about unless you were into them at the time. And the 4th one came in 2010 with Bindi Irwin. But like it's kind of they were milking that, it seems, with those probably direct to video. I'm sure they were.
I think Crow City of Angels was a theatrical release.
Okay.
The second one, but then the next 2 were definitely straight to DVD. Yeah. And I think Crow City of Angels may have been like a spec script that they got the rights to, and then they put the Crow in it. I don't think it was like a direct sequel. I think somebody had an idea for a great movie, and then they kind of tacked the Crow onto it. From what I remember reading about. Yeah, that first movie, fantastic.
I always get, not that I get it confused with it, I always think of 2 things. One, Edward Scissorhands. I don't know why I always associate that in a way, because that was around the same time, was it not?
Yeah,
92 was
morose characters with white faces and kind of long, straggly, dark hair.
And then I also think of how was it WCW, the wrestler Sting completely copied the look of the completely copied. Last story to talk about tonight is, there were 2 Sherlock Holmes movies that we had in the past starring Robert Downey Jr. Now that he is free of the Marvel bondage, he is looking to get Sherlock Holmes going again, and they are talking about 2 different HBO Max series. The last film was in 2011. There's been a rumored Sherlock Holmes 3 for quite a while. And it sounds like that's on the way, and that they'll be introducing characters that then will spin off to this. Sean, essentially a cinematic universe around Sherlock Holmes at a time where we have Enola Holmes happening on Netflix. If you remember that, there's a second one of that coming out with Henry Cavill and completely forgetting her name again. Oh my God, I do this every week.
Millie Bobby Brown.
Thank you. But what are your thoughts on the idea of 2 HBO Max series focused on characters from the Sherlock Holmes world?
So, yeah, I mean, I guess, just like in Marvel, just like in DC, they're just going to like farm every character possible out. We literally just saw like, Morbius, which is like a 3rd, 4th, 5th tier villain. Like they're getting everything they can. And so now they're just going to start doing that with Sherlock Holmes things. I thought the first Sherlock with Robert Downey Jr. was, pretty okay. I thought he was great in it. The second one was just like this like fever dream nightmare. I sometimes like think about that and I'm like, what the hell was that? And so when they kept on saying there's rumors of a 3rd one, I'm like, I really don't think I can handle that. It just kind of bothers me that that's going to exist. I mean, then you look at the Henry Cavill Sherlock, which a lot of people criticized, which was in the Enola Holmes. I thought that Sherlock was amazing. Like it was very like he was off to the side the entire time, but he was sort of the prim and proper gentleman detective like kind of deal where he was already famous, he was already someone interesting, and I really liked that one. I mean. Then you have something like, so these 2, I'm sorry, I may have missed it. There's 2 HBO Max series, and one of them is involving the Downey Jr. Sherlock?
No. So they're saying that both of them are going to focus on specific characters. No details about which characters, but one is expected to be introduced in the 3rd movie.
Okay, now I see what's
That's
happening.
a spider web.
Wow. Okay, that's why I'm losing my mind. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. I look at, so I'll go further with that. And the other like modern Sherlock we have, or the other Sherlock property, is the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock, which like still has like seasons going, doesn't have seasons going. I thought I watched all of them, but then I saw a clip of one that like didn't make any sense. I was like, okay, maybe I missed a season somewhere. But because I don't know where that's even coming out anymore. And I thought that was a very interesting one, especially with the Moriarty, who was played by Andrew Scott, who also played Hot Priest in Fleabag. Just absolutely spectacular villain of Moriarty, a great depiction of it. Yeah, so I don't know, like, do they do like a Moriarty spinoff? That kind of like takes the piss out of the Moriarty character. So like that I don't think that could work. In general, I think that sure, like if you're gonna do something interesting with like a couple of different characters, you go down those roads, make sure you really flesh out these characters. I would recommend not introducing it in the third movie, just kind of having them both be like running parallel to each other and just introduce them on their own lovingly with an HBO Max series, because let's give everything an HBO Max series these days, any character.
Well, and that's what's happening. So, Gio, your thoughts on Sherlock in general, the series from Robert Downey Jr., and then potentially the series of films from Robert Downey Jr., then these two potential series, and also the idea of all these spinoffs. HBO Max is doing series on what is it? They're doing an prequel series. They're doing 2 spinoffs of the Batman, although one has been stalled, and they're doing one series that's going to be a spinoff of Dune that's in early development. So just a lot going on there.
I think that just from my knowledge of talking to people in Hollywood, a lot of the stuff that I hear is intellectual property. IP gets thrown out a lot. IP, you have a piece of IP as opposed to an original story. And I think that it's going heavy in the IP direction because it's just such an easy sell. It already has an audience that's built into it. So instead of taking a risk on a new series that nobody's ever heard of and spending all that money on something, they can just create a universe that already has a tentpole character that everybody who's been alive for the last 100 years or more knows about. So I understand, and they're seeing everybody's success for what they did in the Marvel stuff and the comic book stuff and the different universes within universes, and why not use Sherlock Holmes as well. I did enjoy the both the Sherlock Holmes movies that Robert Downey Jr. did. I thought were fantastic, but I liked. You can see them on YouTube now. There's movies from like the 1950s that have Sherlock Holmes, and they're free on YouTube. I don't know if they're legally free, but they're there. Because I watched like 6 of them last year. They're fabulous, from 70 years ago. So he's always going to be a character that's around. It's too easy to give him villains. It's too easy to give him stories. Everybody loves a mystery. We all love to try and solve the mystery. And that's why I think, we're all attracted to Sherlock, because he's the one that can solve it.
I feel like the biggest mystery series we got in the past 2 decades was Saul. What's actually happening? Craziness.
Oh, always Saul.
It always goes back to Saul. Just think, our kids down the road, right? 35, 40 years from now are going to be getting a reboot of Willy's Wonderland in some way.
Oh my gosh. They won't even know about the original one.
They'll be watching it on the Criterion Network.
There you go.
All right, so that's all we're covering in terms of stories today. We always get into rants and raves at the end to finish up. I'll start off with kind of a little bit of a rant, but this goes back to what we were talking about with critics earlier with Morbius. It's really interesting seeing some reviews that have come out recently for a couple of films that have unsavory characters involved with them. Jared Leto is one, and I don't want to speak to accusations and allegations, but Ezra Miller being the other who's involved in Fantastic Beasts 3, as well as Johnny Depp's whole entanglement with that series and his departure, replaced by Mads Mikkelsen, who was fantastic in that movie, by the way. What's interesting is I had read a few reviews that were not focused on the films themselves, but on the inclusion of those individuals in the films. And that is kind of something that frustrated me, because they weren't talking about the filmmaker behind the property. They weren't talking about the rest of the cast, the writing, anything of that sort. It was that there was a something that was hanging over an aura that was hanging over the film because of the involvement of these individuals. And I think that that's something that we need to be a little bit better about as critics, is just focusing on the actual product in front of us and the storytelling, and, leaving at the door what may have happened with these individuals who we also don't know their entire lives. For instance, and not to get deep into this, but the Ezra Miller stuff that's been coming out the past week, the story that came out earlier today was Warner Brothers is in fact dealing with it in their own way. It's just not public that they're dealing with it. They met back on March 30th. So the messages that I've got from people after I posted my Fantastic Beasts 3 review that were like, oh, I can't see this because of Ezra Miller, and Warner Brothers is hiding, or covering up what he's doing and not taking action. We're just not privy to that, as we're not privy to a lot of things. So I think that as critics, we just need to do a better job of gatekeeping a little bit and making sure that we're focusing on the actual product in front of us and not tearing it apart for our own personal feelings about an actor's personal life. Now, if you don't like that actor as an actor and that translates over to the character they're playing, 100% go for it. And that's kind of where I am with Jared Leto. I don't love Jared Leto as an actor. Didn't hate him in Morbius. I didn't think he was terrible. But then when I find out that he was pushing himself around in a wheelchair the entire production to get into character, I'm like, oh God, like what did Nicolas Cage do on Willy's Wonderland? Was he just like chugging soda the entire time to stay like hyper?
Pinball all day
when it was time to be in character.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
But yeah, I think that it's just something that bothered me. And I try to, and it's from some larger outlets, which was kind of interesting to me. So, you know, one thing I always encourage people, when even if they like a review that I write or don't like a review that I write, I always encourage them to look at other reviews too, if they're into that, and then form your own opinion when you go. I think that's important for us to do if we're going to continue on in this business. But, you know, that's my 2 cents. So for everyone listening.
Agreed. Hear, hear.
Hear, hear. Sean, you have a rave.
Yes, I have a rave, and it's a rave about a guy that is having the best week of his life, and that is Gerard Carmichael. If you don't know Gerard Carmichael, he is a stand-up comedian, a very, very funny stand-up comedian. I've like heard some of his other stand-ups in the past, and they're very good. He just released a new stand-up called Rathaniel. And I watched it last night, and it's, first of all, if you want to laugh, then don't watch this one. That's I know that's a weird endorsement for a comedy special. There's some funny moments. There's some jokes there that made me laugh in the beginning and everything like that. But in this comedy special, he comes out as gay, literally to the audience. And that's like him also for his career coming out as gay. And it was the most fascinating thing because he does that sort of halfway through. And then he's sort of exploring how difficult that process has been and how he's dealt with his friends and family dealing with that process. And he makes it funny. And then he makes it extremely, extremely tragic because, you know, obviously there are unfortunately some family members that aren't exactly like, you know, too psyched about it. But he explores that with the audience. The audience is like talking to him throughout the whole thing. Like he starts off saying like, hey guys, like, you know, you can participate with me and everything like that, which is nothing a stand-up comedian ever does. And then like, you know, it starts off where they like kind of jab him a little bit and heckle him a little bit through a few things. And then all of a sudden it turns into just them like, you know, almost like a therapy session between them and the audience. And I remember watching this thing. I'm like, I am getting very fulfilled as a person instead of hearing like jokes like if this was a John Mulaney stand-up. And, you know, not to belittle John Mulaney, he's hysterical and has great stand-ups, but this was just something entirely different. It's directed by Bo Burnham as well. And so
that's interesting.
And so he's directed stand-up specials before. He directed a Chris Rock special that went like, you know, it was like fascinating. And I was like, oh, this is actually, he's doing this a little bit differently, even though Chris Rock is obviously more of the typical stand-up comedian. And then in this one, he's just like, it's a deep personal connection with Gerard Carmichael that we get. And it's unbelievable how well he did. Oh my God. It's extremely good. So then after that, I'm raving about him because then like, that's a very deep personal one. He then hosts SNL. The guy hosts SNL, and he literally starts off by saying, I'm probably without a doubt the least famous host on SNL there's ever been. And he might actually be right. And then he goes into some great solid bit parts. He absolutely nails it on SNL. So my guy is the guy my rave is the guy that's been doing has been having the best week ever. And that's Gerard Carmichael. Watch Rathaniel. Don't expect like, you know, laughs the whole way, but truly a spectacular comedy special, which is weird to say those two things at once.
Yeah, what I had read was that it was also a spectacular documentary unintentionally. Like that's how it comes across, which is kind of fascinating. It makes me want to watch it.
It's what's so interesting about it is obviously most of the time you'd think like you hear like comedians have everything planned to a T, like when in their acts, and I don't think he did here. And if he did, he's the most brilliant actor of all time. And like, but he didn't, because like he's working with audience participation, and like there's pauses there that go for like, I mean, almost a minute. And I mean, it's unbelievable that like he's processing things as he goes. So I think you're right, Joe. It's like it is like sort of a documentation of what's going on. But I mean, I really, it's an hour long. I recommend it for anybody. It's just like it's a quick hour that just like really fulfills the soul.
That's awesome. That's very cool. Gio, aside from ranting that your wife is away and you can't see any new movies.
I feel you on that one, by the way. I feel you really hard on that
I
one.
know. I think a lot of people can relate to that.
I'm a single guy, so I don't have that issue. But no. Rave or rant from you.
Well, I guess the only thing I would rant about is there's this theater. I live in Culver City between two studios. You got the Culver Studios, which is leased out by Amazon, so it's Amazon Studios, and then Sony Studios. Sony Studios where they like shoot Jeopardy, a bunch of other stuff. And the movie theater next to my house that I would go to for the last however many years I've lived here has been closed for 2 years. So if I'm going to rant about anything, just somebody open that up. And Amazon, it's right next door to your studio. How easy would it be for you guys? It's not like you're strapped for cash. Go ahead and buy that studio and just open it up. Show your Amazon movies there in the theater, along with some other like second run, cheaper movies that everyone can go and enjoy. I think that would be a great idea. So I was trying to think of a rant or a rave. I walked past that on my walk today. It was like, I'm going to rant about this. I've just been looking at this beautiful theater with chains around the door for the last 2 years.
Sean, that happened to you, didn't it? Like after one of your theaters closed.
Be grateful, Gio, because they just knocked both of mine down.
Oh yeah, they had a dollar theater. There was another one in Culver City that they knocked down and turned into a mixed use, a condo and Pilates studio.
I would love to live in an old movie theater, though. I'd be like, guess what this was?
Oh, that movie theater was fantastic. You could go there. There was a lot. But prior, when I first moved to Los Angeles, there had to be at least like $5 or $6 theaters that you could go to, and there'd always be trouble. Like you could see the movie for $2, but there'd always be some sort of like police activity in the parking lot. But
that comes with the territory of a $2 movie.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's absolutely crazy. All right, well, let's talk about what's coming out this week real quick. Ambulance and Sonic the Hedgehog 2 are the two big releases in theaters. We also have all the Old Knives on Prime Video and limited theaters, which is getting really good reviews actually, as a spy thriller with Chris Pine. Cal hits limited theaters. I still don't know what that's about. It's a documentary.
First Cow is all I keep thinking of whenever
exactly.
I think.
And then Everything Everywhere All at Once is opening in limited theaters. Sean, you won't get it for like 3 years.
No, it's not. This movie is not going at, like, I'm telling you, I get the weirdest movies in the theater that's now like 40 minutes from me because the two other ones got knocked down. And Everything Everywhere All at Once is not playing anywhere all at once. I just turned into a rant.
It's very limited. It's very limited this week.
Limited.
It's wide next week, I think, which is crazy. Sean, is that theater that we went to isn't the one that got knocked down, right?
No, the one we went to, the other ones were like, I mean, I'm telling you, they're like several seconds away from me, like this way. And those got knocked down for a parking lot, so cue the Counting Crows song. And the other one is just the BJ's now.
I'm moving next week, and there's 2 theaters within 10 minutes of me, and I'm so thrilled. I can't wait. So excited. Oh, and actually closer to that county theater I was talking about. Not quite as close as I'd like to be, but able to go. Gio, such a pleasure to have you on the pod. It's always nice keeping in touch with you. We shoot messages back and forth every once in a while, and I know we've been trying to make this work. Let people know where they can find you and how they can keep up on everything that you have going on, and where can they also get those Willy's Wonderland comics?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can follow me Twitter. It's Go Parsons, GOPARSONS. Same thing at Instagram, Go Parsons. So you can follow me there. Try and keep up with all the Willy's news. It's mostly just Willy's news, hardly ever any personal stuff. I'm trying to think of some funny Twitter thing, but I'm like not good at it. Willy stuff I can do. Let's see here. Where can you get the Willy's Wonderland comics? They're available at your local comic book shop. If you ever walk in, you can always tell the person at the cashier, at the desk, that, just say, "Hey, I want to get the Willy's comics. Could you be sure to order them?" And that they can come your way. You can also find them at AmericanMythology.net. AmericanMythology.net. You can order them and get the paper copies because they are just beautiful. They're really well done. Definitely worth checking those out. And I think if you go onto Amazon, for everybody who likes to live in the 21st century, you can get the digital editions there. If you have like one of those Amazon subscriptions. I think that you can just download them for free. So definitely worth checking out all that kind of stuff. And Joe, Sean, I appreciate it so much that you guys had me on and that you didn't kick me off. I was really like over under 20 minutes on when I would be banned, but I made it through. So
absolutely. And like I said, it's a pleasure to have you on. We've been working to have you on for a while, so I'm glad that we were able to do this. It's always fun talking and even just learning about like the experience after Willie's came out, because it's such a ride for you, I'm sure. And just learning that you have more in the works is exciting for us as fans of what you've already done. So I look forward to seeing more of that.
I truly appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll have you on when we're talking about the next, like the IP that you were talking about, Fast and the Furious 11. We're excited.
I'd be bragging.
yeah. Justice League 2, I think, is what you said.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if anyone's heard of that.
Marriage Story 2. All right. Since we already talked about it. Gio, hang around for a second. We're going to play an outro, and we'll catch you on the other side. Everyone, see you next week.
As always, thanks for listening. You can follow both Joe and Sean on Instagram at Guy at the Movies and Math Teacher Movies. New episodes of the Guy at the Movies podcast with Joe and Sean are available every Wednesday morning, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, be on the lookout for special spoiler pods, where we dive deep into the latest film releases. If you like what you hear, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. See you next time.